So what's your outlook for the Bitcoin marketplace in the coming 1 to 3 years?
So I was pulling some stats together. I've definitely noticed and been a part of the increased liquidity in this asset classes. But I was pulling some stats, and here's some stats to share with you. So everyone knows the story of the crypto winter and sort of liquidity trailed off. And daily volume of Bitcoin was only 500,000, which is not great. In the period from sort of mid-2020 up through the end of last year, daily liquidity volume trade is actually 1 million Bitcoin per day. Now that may not sound like a big change, but then if you overlay the price impact on top of that, we're talking about 10x. So 39 billion a day is the average, right, of where we get to. So, modest in terms of, only twice, 500,000 to 1 million in Bitcoin terms, but 10x in terms of value. And so the market cap, I think the liquidity picture is really important to being able to attract more institutional capital into the space, knowing that you can transact confidently in large sizes at any time. So that's a stat I wanted to share. The other one I wanted to share was the market cap of Bitcoin, right? So, and I looked at the market cap of Bitcoin relative to global central bank liquidity, right? And in that sort of prior period, it was kind of irrelevant at almost zero. So it was 0.6% in December of 2019. And by November of 2021, it's 3.3%. So I think this asset class, in terms of establishing itself, needs to operate at scale. And I think that's one good stat to call out there with you. So I looked at the number of large transactions. So, and I define large as more than 1 million. And if you look at that stat, we've had more than a 4 times increase in transactions over 1 million. So we went from an average of 1,300 per day to 5,500 per day by the end of 2021.
Okay, do you see any other major changes over the past year as it relates to corporate views toward Bitcoin?
More and more exploration of wanting to get involved. And so we have deeper and deeper engagement. I think I heard you earlier talk about the accounting as a challenge for corporates, but I would say they're more inclined to listen, to do work, and to want to engage. There's a lot of use cases that are centered around payments. And so payments seems to be both micropayments and larger payments.
A lot of companies coming to you, wanting you to help them solve the cryptocurrency payment issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's kind of masked back to my Coinbase cloud reference earlier in using our infrastructure, but that's certainly an emerging theme. I just want to say one bigger picture thing that I think is really notable and helps the asset class. So, which is the establishment of stablecoins, right? So stablecoin balances are, I think, 153 billion today. And the reason why that's important is because in a still slightly unfamiliar asset class, and you've got, Bitcoin, you know more than anyone about the volatility of Bitcoin. But if the only choice available to institutions, either I own Bitcoin or I'm out, because I sold Bitcoin, but we'll have capital flight that leaves the asset class. So stable coins are really important, because if you want to begin to trade a little bit and you have a risk-off moment,
they're the risk-off asset.
Then you can sort of put your capital into a stable coin, which definitionally holds its value. And so we're not having capital flight leave the asset class. And so I think that's a great development. I think keeps people invested in the space.
So that went from like 30 billion to 150 billion in 12 months?
It went from 10 billion in 2018 to 153 billion today.
Yeah, I mean, the news last night was in Lebanon, the banks have frozen everybody's assets, converted them into local currency, devalued them 93%, and they're going to hand back, a few percentage points of your money over 15 years at the advice of the IMF and the World Bank. And if I was sitting in these countries, I would be thinking, how do I convert to crypto dollars or some kind of stable coin and take possession of it? Because dollars in the bank are not the same as dollars in your pocket. That's for sure. Does Coinbase handle Circle, Tether? Is there a particular stable coin of choice here, or do you trade them all, or what?
We've got USDC and Tether on the platform. We don't have a preference of one or the other, but those are the two main stable coins that I see people using the most.
What advice would you offer to corporations that are looking to integrate Bitcoin into their P&L or their balance sheet?
The big picture, I know this is Bitcoin specific, but I would say it's really hard, I think, for the leadership of any corporation right now not to sort of dig in and understand and explore the relationship that they may wind up having with digital assets and Bitcoin specifically. And so we're seeing digital transformation rock every single industry and disrupt it. And this NFT moment that we're having now is another such example of sort of a forcing function of thinking through the relationship that companies have with their clients, their supply chain, and others. And so the advice I have is please engage us in a conversation. Would love to demonstrate the tools, would love to talk about increasing people's education and familiarity. And then let's act with purpose once you get there.
If I show up to you with $10 million of capital to invest, is that enough? Do I need 100 million? Is 1 million the cutoff? Do you have a general feel?
All are welcome. And what I'd love to see is not everything has to be super high touch, right? And so if you're a developer, you can build a Coinbase cloud, you can plug in through APIs, you can use their interface, you can do commerce integrations, you have the notion of enterprise sales. And so every door is open. And so really the only minimum we would talk about is probably on the Prime platform, and a handful of millions sort of thing as a guideline. But I'd like to welcome everyone to participate, and not everyone needs the super high touch version of it, right? Sometimes it's just a plug and play wallet as a service integration and then move on.
What are your plans for the future, and what's your vision for Coinbase Institutional Services? And maybe Coinbase in general, if you want to share any of that with us.
I think that during the past year in particular, I think the asset class, if I look at anything, if I look at what's on the news on an hourly basis or anywhere else, I feel like the asset class itself has established itself as a place that is appropriate for large institutions, corporates, and others to allocate capital to it. And when I think through the investment activity that we're targeting, I see that growing for sure. And our founder Brian talks about the utility phase of crypto, and we're having more and more use cases, right? Accepting payment, commerce, NFTs, other new engagements. That too is bringing in more institutional capital and a diversity of type of institutional client into this space.